Hello everybody, my name is Will and welcome back to Flyout, and do I ever have a concept for you today? And you might be thinking, hey, what are you doing to that poor push propeller aircraft? And well, I'm putting two of them side by side and strapping them together with a massive fuselage on the center. So, a couple of questions you probably have. Number one, why? That's probably the only question, but you've probably asked it a few times. And to be entirely frank, I can't answer that question because there is no good, feasible reason that anybody in their right mind would ever do this rather than having one fuselage in the center and then two engine pods on the side, and then you just put the propellers on the front like P-38 or like any heavy fighter that ever existed ever. But we're doing this because we don't have to appeal to logic and reason, because this is a video game. So we get to play in our little fantasy world where things don't really make sense. But regardless, we can get a hell of a lot of performance out of an aircraft like this. We have two engines, so we can get a pretty good top speed. Furthermore, we can also load the front of this thing with guns, because we have three frontal fuselages at which we can place guns to our heart's content. So we've got, in total, 6 20mm and plenty of lifting capacity for many more should we want to make modifications of this in the future, and that may well be coming, because one thing I do want to do in the future is potentially put a jet in the push propeller aircraft that we made in the last video, which is being modified in this video into this thing, and therefore it only makes sense in the same video where I put a jet into that thing to put a jet into this thing, or more specifically, two jets in the place of the propellers. So we may still see a little bit more of this. Maybe we won't. I don't know. You just saw a 6-barreled revolving cannon on this thing. I guarantee you that is not on there anymore. But anyway, yes. So stylistically, obviously we take heavy cues from the aircraft we made in the last video. The entire fuselage is very similar. I did slightly change up the cockpit just because I thought it looked a little bit more realistic to how one of these things would look, with a much sheerer front face on that glass, which, you know, I don't know, it just feels more era specific, era correct. And you may be wondering, why are you putting a bump on the central fuselage? Well, in order to build this thing symmetrically, we actually have a third pilot on this thing, shoved inside that third fuselage. Now, in real life, he wouldn't exist, and that bump would probably be there for fuel or something. I don't really know. But regardless, it had to be there, otherwise there was just a head poking out of the central fuselage, which was a little bit unnerving. It gave vibes of, one of that meme that the kids are spreading around today. You know the one. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much done here. We're putting in the guns, and you can see the absolutely wild amount that we can put on this thing and still have plenty of room for more. I mean, I put it's 8 20mm. 8 20mm on this thing, and I was thinking that was going to disappoint you because of how little firepower this thing has. That's how ridiculous we're talking in terms of space to put guns we have. But regardless, let's see how it performs. Okie dokie, here we have our, currently called the Zwilling P, ignore the red outlines on those parts. That's fine. That's what you get with early access. But so what we've done is we've taken two of the vehicle that I made in the last video, and I've combined them together with this central fuselage housing 4 20mm cannons and a shed load of ammunition, therefore, and as you can see, the actual pilot for this thing, so that I could actually work with symmetry on for this aircraft, because it is still a symmetrical build. We have two pilots, or, well, technically three, but two pilots, let's just go with that. And hopefully, I've done literally no testing, these engines should still work. These are the exact same engines that we used on the single-engined version of this aircraft, and we're going to see if we can get off the ground with this. Okie dokie, here we have our fighter all working, and I've just noticed that the front wheels are steering as well as the rear one, which means we may be a little bit hard to control on the ground, but you know what, it does the job. And if I pop the flaps on a bit more, here we go, we should have plenty of lift on this thing, and yeah, we're getting up some reasonable speed. It's obviously going to be a little bit hard to actually pull the nose up because of how far back this rear landing gear is. We may need to bring that forward a little bit, but there we go. Up into the skies we go. And generally, it seems that this thing doesn't like turning. It seems to want to pitch down quite a lot, which implies to me that our center of mass is too far forward, which I guess makes some degree of sense. What we can do to counteract that is move the fuel tanks backwards, or more specifically add a fuel tank in the boom. That should move some of the weight backwards, as well as moving the ammunition backwards just to balance this thing out a bit, and then hopefully we should have a little bit more agility to play with. How long have these tanks in the noses that I used for aesthetics contained pure jet fuel? That probably wasn't helping things. Okay, so we've done a couple of things here. The skin thickness was on the default value of 12mm, which is ridiculous, and we've decreased it to 1mm, so we've saved some weight, moved our landing gear forward, moved our center of mass backwards, and pitched the tail just a little bit up. So now, in theory, we should have quite a lot more in the way of turning authority, and as you can see, this is a lot better in terms of agility. I mean, it's no Spitfire, but it's a heavy fighter, so what do you kind of expect? However, the top speed is significantly better. This is much, much, much better. This is the kind of speed I was hoping for. Now I'm wondering how fast we can actually go with this thing. This looks so strange. I love it so much, though. This is actually exactly what I had in mind when I was designing this thing. And my exhausts have changed to... We don't have two-cylinder engines. That's not quite right. But, yeah, I mean, we've got quite a lot of drag on this thing. Obviously, 3 fuselages is... It's a lot of surface area. And we are very heavy because we have all of these 20 mils, which are some serious firepower. But, hey, I mean, good fun. Okay, so it looks like we top out at about 530 kilometers an hour currently. We might just be able to eke a little bit more speed out of it by dropping the RPM of the propellers. But generally, we have a straight line speed somewhere in the region of 530 to 550. 550 we're about to pip, which is, I mean, that's not bad at all, to be honest. That's pretty good. And, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of happy with the actual performance of this thing. Now, obviously, we're lacking in the form of a skin somewhat, so that is something that we're going to have to do. But I really like the idea of an aircraft like this. It's just so insanely ridiculous. Okie dokie, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to spawn in a target drone, and we're actually going to try take it down with our 20 mils here. Now, that thing is obviously jet-powered, and we are only kind of World War II era, late World War II, but definitely World War II era prop-powered. So it's quite fast in comparison. We're going to see if we can catch up and actually take this thing down here. Well, no matter how many I spawn in, they spawn too far away and facing away from me, so... well, we're not going to catch up with any jets in this thing, as we've just determined. So instead of that, how about we give this thing a paint job and the correct number of bleeding exhausts? Okay, it's fairly simplistic, but we've gone with the kind of like green and white Italian-looking thing, because somewhere along the way it stopped looking Swedish and it started looking Italian, in my opinion, and I don't know if you agree, but maybe it's just because it's stupid and doesn't make any sense, just like a lot of the Italian Air Force's designs at the time. But yeah, that's our plane, basically. I reckon we're about done with this thing. I mean, I wouldn't mind making the roll rate just a little bit better. Perhaps we also set these here to be dual flaps and roll surfaces, and then hopefully the performance will be a little bit more rounded. Okay, I've also just put some little bomb-looking things on the underside of this, so we can also, we can test out how bombs would work, maybe? Okay, here we go down the runway slightly wonkily for, hopefully, our final test flight here. So, I really like this thing. It's so ridiculous, but I do like the concept behind it, even if it's not even slightly practical. So let's see if we can gain a little bit of altitude here, and then we'll come around and see if we can do a little bomb run, maybe on the building next to the control tower at the airfield. I reckon that's a fairly good place for us to test our aim, because it's quite a small building. I'm probably going to miss horribly. Okay, inbound we go. Now, I have no idea what the trajectory on these things are going to be like. I think they're a little bit lighter than you would expect for a pair of bombs, or a trio of bombs, I guess, in this case. So we'll drop them quite early, and just a little bit on the late side. I don't think that was too bad for a first attempt at bombing. But we've got no more, so that's a shame. Maybe we'll get better at that in the future, especially if I can start putting on some bombs with standard weights and see if we can actually do some damage with these things. But regardless, I reckon it's about high time we bring this in for a landing and draw this video here to a close. Now, I think I've remembered to put brakes on this thing, so this shouldn't be too difficult here. We've got to just line it up. We've got a little bit of a crosswind coming 11 kilometers an hour from the right, which is nothing to worry about particularly. We will extend our weird landing gear, and we're lined up quite nicely actually here for the center of the runway. Just give her a little bit of rudder. Oh, that's a little bit too much elevator there, and bit of a rough landing, but we've brought her down. And there we go. Bring her to a stop, and there we go. A fairly successful first couple of flights for this thing. What do you think about this concept? Do you think there's merit in this? Do you think it would be better if we'd just done the 2 engine pods and put the cockpit in the center? Because I'm pretty sure it probably would have been. But regardless, this is some crazy aircraft, and I really hope you I really hope you've enjoyed this one. If you have, please leave a like, comment, and or subscribe, and I will see you for more silly things like this very soon in the future. Goodbye! And as always, a huge thank you to this channel's patrons: Badger, Burner Potato, CamJam135, Cody N, DJ Pete, Skavoon, Gunmaster929, Sad Cat, Just Casualty 601, Last Legend 11, Mark Mardley Invested, Nicholas K, Rolsos Brocken, Ryan Brody, The Canesian Emperor, Zerasheim, and Zeit Wolverine. Thank you so much for your support.